So
Yeah, like even all of these knobs.
Yeah, do you know what they all mean?
no, not a damn clue.
Nope.
Not a clue.
You just know on.
I know on and off, and I just recently figured out the volume situation.
We know mute. No, that didn't mute me at all.
You should send this out as the behind the scenes.
Oh, we will.
We try to act like we're smart, but we're like, oh.
Yeah, we do that.
Is this the mute? Is this the mute? No.
No. Don't mess with it, Billy.
I thought I had a mute button.
You should have a mute button. Okay, welcome back to the Engineered Performance Podcast. I'm Dr. Joey Glenn, here with Billy Snyder.
Hey.
And Brady Burrows.
Hello.
And we got a special guest today, Carmen. How do you say your last name?
Tebby Preeb.
Oh, I'm glad you did that because I would have messed that up. She's a sports psychologist, right?
I sure am.
We'll go into a little bit of her background, what she does, and we'll kind of talk about psychology of both sport and then just general how it relates to general population. Maybe some tips and tricks for athletes and tips and tricks for Gen Pop, people trying to find motivation, keep motivation up. Seemed like it was a good topic for the beginning of the new year. Everybody's super motivated right now, and it seems to crash in like 2 months. So we'll come up with some tips and tricks, some things to help people start a healthy lifestyle and keep it. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Cool. So Carmen,
Yes.
give me your background. Tell us about you.
Sure. So my husband and I recently moved to Ankeny a little over a year ago. Before that, we were in Oklahoma for 9 years, and I was the director of psychological resources for the student athletes at University of Oklahoma. And we moved to be closer to family, so we're excited to be in Iowa and closer to family, and it's been a good land for us. And so after we moved here, I was doing a little bit of private practice, working at Iowa State part-time, and now I'm working at University of Iowa Athletics Department, and I work with their student athletes and coaches.
It's a good move, in my opinion.
It worked out for us.
I'm a Hawkeye. Awesome. So how did you end up in sports psychology?
So I was a college student athlete. I played volleyball at University of South Carolina, Spartanburg. It's actually called USC Upstate now.
Nice.
They're D1, and I could actually say I played a sport before they had the rules changed. That makes me feel kind of old, but they didn't have a libero back then, but that's what I would have been.
Awesome.
I was a psychology major, and when I got out of it, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. Then found out that there's this thing called sports psychology. Love sports, love psychology, so I just kind of landed in it. So I went to Wake Forest, got my master's degree there, and then I went to University of North Texas, and that's where I got my PhD in counseling psychology at the specialization in sports psychology. So I'm a licensed psychologist, so I kind of treat the range of things that student athletes might see. So some more of the clinical things like depression, anxiety, all the way to the other end in terms of performance optimization.
Awesome. That's a huge scope. I think psychology, it's super intriguing for me because it's just not my jam at all. I like physiology and straightforward type stuff. Like if this is happening, it could be this, this, or this. Whereas in psychology, in my mind, it's
It depends.
limitless options that you can just kind of go down. So it doesn't make sense to me, but I think that's why it intrigues me. Yeah, I went to Iowa and I took a bunch of sports psych classes there. I was doing exercise science and they made us take quite a few sports psych classes, which, like I said, were intriguing, but just it never stuck with me. It just didn't. I couldn't grasp a lot of those concepts. And I think a lot of the reason is because my experience with it was nothing before that. When I was in high school playing sports, there was no talk of that. It was almost looked down upon. If you tried to use any sort of visualization or any sort of mind practice, it was almost like you were weak. Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You're a wrestler.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I remember one day we had a guy who came in and he just did, yoga with us. I don't remember where he was from or where our coaches found him, but we did an hour of yoga, and at the end we just laid there. It was the day before a meet, so we weren't going to go hard that day anyway. And we just laid there and he talked about, he walked us through, visualizing every minute of every period. I thought it was awesome. And the second he walked out, the coach was giving him shit, making fun of the dude. I was like, what? This was great. And then we never got it again, so. But what are you gonna do?
How did you initially get him in there then?
I have no idea where they found him or where he came from. I don't know. I didn't have any part in it.
Oh.
Coach just have to say yes to somebody.
Yeah,
Let 'em go.
and I thought it was awesome. It was something that I could have used for sure.
Yeah. Do you find that most of your athletes are receptive?
Yeah, and we work really hard at taking away that stigma too.
Sure.
And when I talk to athletes, I usually say, like on one end, you've got athletes who need an athletic trainer, or might Joey, what you're working on.
Yeah.
And they have to restore functioning, so they have to fix an injury to get better, to even be able to perform. And on the other hand, Billy, like what you're doing, strength and conditioning, things are going well, but they want to get even better. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to get better. And so when you can really, decrease the stigma, and getting coaches involved is huge, then they buy into it. And if you, help them understand you're just improving skills, nothing's broken. It's just
Right.
we all want to get better, then they're pretty receptive to it.
I'm sure that's a huge point too. Like reassuring somebody you're not broken. Like this isn't a weakness, but this is something you can improve just like everything else. Because that seems to happen in the gym even. And then I'm sure when you show them results, they feel more comfortable going into that next match, or they feel more comfortable just living, that's where you get your buy-in.
Yeah, a lot of professional sports. If you look at the Chicago Cubs, they just started a really expansive mental skills program.
Awesome.
And so there's a lot of examples in pro sports, especially Major League Baseball. A lot of the Olympians use it. I mean, there's full-time psychologists with the USOC.
Cool.
So, yeah, if they need it, why wouldn't we?
No kidding. When did the Cubs start that? Do you know?
I think it's a couple years ago, because their director of mental training, his name's Josh Lafrac. He actually has a couple podcasts, too.
Cool. Very cool.
And he works, because I met him while he was down here in the Des Moines area with the AAA team, but that's what he does. He travels around all different places, and there's somebody else that works with the team in Chicago, kind of the Major League one, but a lot of MLB programs have that.
Not a bad organization to be a part of the last couple years.
Yeah.
Sweet. There's a pretty direct correlation there.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Now, you brought something up, Joey, about, you didn't really say it, but it alluded in my head, like metrics. Like in the gym, you can easily, say, hey, I got 10 pounds more on my back squat.
Right.
Well, how do you necessarily, track improvement with
That's
that?
the million-dollar question.
No kidding.
Yeah.
And one of the things, this is the thing that's hardest, is that when you're working with you how many reps you have to do. Okay. The problem is that example you went through that great visualization, but if you never used it again,
Right.
it worked then, but we don't always use the mental reps the way we do the physical reps, and so you have to create structure. You have to have performance journals. You have to track what you're doing, but there is no obtainable measure. But the athletes know when it's working.
For sure.
They know when their confidence, they know when their distraction is improving. They know all those things. But, and I mean, I obviously think it helps performance, but there's not that direct correlation between when I lost this much weight or got this much fitter or was
Right.
able to lift this is when my performance increased. So it's difficult.
And
Yeah.
I also think it's a skill like anything else too, because I know myself when I first started trying to meditate and take time to myself and just be inside my own head, it was so difficult, very uncomfortable. Yeah, I don't like being there. I didn't at first. And I would think about all the billion things I should have been doing instead, or what my kids are up to, and and it was a mess. So I think it's just like anything else. It's a skill you'd have to practice. And it'd be nice to have somebody that guides you through that knows what they're doing, instead of having to learn by yourself like I did. Whatever.
Yeah.
It worked. What was your experience, Brady, with any sports psych? Did you guys do anything at East?
No, we didn't really have anything. I mean, it was all just kind of go in, do your work, and get
Yep.
out of there.
Yep.
And
I
like
think
you said, there's kind of a stigma there where nobody wants to talk about it, I feel like, so
For
you're
sure.
kind of weak if, you are visualizing goals or you have an issue, so.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had the same experience. I think the tide's actually turning. It seems to be much more receptive. People seem to be much more receptive to it. So,
Oh, yeah, if it's at a professional level, I feel like it's, finally getting out there a little bit. And
right.
And most NCAA schools have it now. They have at least one person on staff.
Makes sense. Very cool.
And is that something the coaches kind of promote for the
Depends.
guys to come through and that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, and it also depends on the qualifications, because there's people who are licensed psychologists and can do more of the clinical stuff, but they haven't been trained in the performance optimization. And then there's people who have been trained in performance optimization, but they're not licensed to do the clinical stuff. And so ideally you have both, so that you can kind of be fluid in what the student athlete brings, and depending on what their need is and kind of what services they're asking for. But yeah, making relationships with the coaches is critical. And I find, too, with the trainers and with the strength staff, I mean, if they support it and they're using the same terminology, they're using the same structure, it's going to benefit the athlete.
Right. Most definitely. It's interesting. So let's talk about practical applications to high school athletes. What are some things that high school athletes maybe that are in the same boat that aren't really getting that sort of that backing like we had when we were in high school, what's something that they could do that would be actionable steps right away that might help? Let's start with maybe performance standards. So an athlete, somebody that's maybe like a soccer player, what can they do to help increase their performance to be more related to sports psych that they might not be getting elsewhere?
I think one of the things you mentioned, visualization, it's huge.
Sure.
I call it productive daydreaming. We all daydream. We all think about all those mistakes we've made. We all dwell on them. But if you're not productive about it, it'd be the exact same thing as like, I'm just going to go in the weight room, throw some weights around and expect it to work.
Right,
and
yeah.
It would never work.
No.
And so, but when you create, imagery scripts that are really helpful, that are vivid, that are detailed, that can be a very good tool for not only confidence, but also kind of focusing in on the game that's ahead of you.
Awesome. What's an imagery script?
Yeah, so it's detailing, like what you had said,
Yeah.
going through, if you use wrestling as the example, you go through every period, you go through every single minute, but you make it very vivid, you make it very detailed so that it feels like you're actually there. And then that can build confidence, and it's it does create some muscle memory because you're getting reps when your body's not actually doing it, because we know there's only so much our bodies can take, but you're getting some practice. So like learning new plays. I find it helpful too if your coach is like changing your technique and you're not exactly sure, like you're getting it down and you're imagining how your body feels as you're making each one of those tweaks. That can really help.
Awesome. That makes sense. Makes plenty of sense.
I feel like that'd be so hard, like in a sport where like anything can happen. Like for my instance, like I pitched, like it was easy for me to like rehearse because I have the ball, I control the game, I can go through my own like sequence. But like for something that like I have to do on the fly, I don't know.
Like wrestling, where
yeah.
you're
Yeah.
reacting to your opponent and that kind of stuff.
Like if I was just sitting there kind of rehearsing that, I would have like no idea like what to even think about.
Yeah, I get that.
That's true. How do you think you'd handle that? I mean, for me personally, I remember thinking I would visualize just best possible outcome. Obviously not sticking somebody in like a minute, but it was always like, I'm going to come out, I'm going to execute my game plan the whole time. I would never really, I never visualized anything other than that. What do you recommend?
You kind of highlight like where would you have your performance anxiety in terms of like your decision making. So like it's confidence in your decision making. So you can't exactly play out exactly what it's going to look like, but there's certain templates of how it's going to go. And so you're including, even when this happens, this is how I bounce back. And so recovering from mistakes, this is how I, gain that edge back if I'm behind versus rehearsing, oh my gosh, I can't believe I screwed that up again. Because that's what we mostly do is we think about all the bad things because our negative thoughts are stickier than our positive thoughts.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I always I like visualizing too and thinking about like really understanding my role in the game or in the match and what I'm supposed to do the whole time. You know what I mean? I think it's a good example to think about like a UFC fighter. They always get crap for being so cocky, right? They're always like, I'm gonna destroy people, and they're always thinking they're gonna win. I don't feel like they always actually think that. Like, of course, they're running up against somebody that's gonna beat them up every now and then, right? But if they don't say that, like you're putting yourself in that negative motivation, and you're already kind of beating yourself. So I don't hate it when people go out and say how great they are. I love it.
I honestly love it.
Yeah.
Like Conor McGregor as an example, like
He's a boss.
absolutely love him. Like,
Yeah.
Just his mindset on
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Although he might actually think he could beat anybody's ass in the world. Like
I mean, he's kind of proved it though.
He's
too.
convincing. That's true. That's true.
It's half the battle.
Yeah, that's true.
Exactly.
They're so damn cocky, and I love it. I love it. But I also like when they're that cocky and then get beat.
It's got to happen every once in a while.
So yeah, that kind of is a good segue into the role of like negative talk. Like I'm sure you see that a lot in athletes, but also probably just general population people. How do you kind of remove some of that negative talk and push somebody's like mindset into a more positive direction?
So, a big thing right now is mindfulness.
Sure.
And just kind of being more present in the moment. And a lot of people, they don't like to talk about that because that sounds so goofy.
Yeah.
And, but really all mindfulness is paying attention to what's right in front of you right now. And so one of the things is with our negative thoughts is when we rehearse it so much, we think that they're true. And we forget that they're just thoughts. And we've convinced ourselves that that's reality. And so when you're practicing mindfulness, you're more focused on, okay, what's actually going on right now versus what has my head told me is happening. And it's kind of creating a little bit of distance, so that's some perspective taking. And then accepting that, hey, we all have negative thoughts. I mean, we're all performers. Not a single one of us, even the cockiest one, sometimes I was like, God, I hope I don't screw that up.
Yeah. other than
It's-
Connor.
Yeah. So when you just so when you just accept it as normal, you don't beat yourself up about it so much. And
Right.
Just understand we're all performance. We're all going to have it. We just got to get through it.
Right. I think I can see how that plays a huge role because if I'm chasing a certain goal, I can get myself caught in that loop a lot. And an example I'm thinking of right now is like if I'm trying to go for a heavy lift, like we've been doing this, we did the deadlift cycle for a while back. We were just doing a squat cycle. I found myself like sometimes approaching the bar and thinking, like going through my head how I'm going to bail when I miss the lift. And that's so counterintuitive and it just doesn't work for me. And sometimes I'd have to step back and just be like, what the hell am I doing? Because I have to know, one, for safety, like, yeah, I know how to get out of the way, but my body knows how to get out of the way. I just need to go in there thinking or knowing that I'm going to make the lift because I get in my head a lot. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Billy? I know you're always chasing that heavy lift.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I've necessarily mastered it, but like when I do like my cycles, like I don't try to purposely, or I shouldn't say purposely, but I don't attempt something that I know I'm going to fail.
Right.
So now it's just in my head that we're like, well, if I'm going to pick this up or do something with it, like I'm going to make it no matter what.
If I put it on the bar, I'm going to lift it.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That makes sense.
So I think that you just have to know like your own limitations in that.
Yeah. It reminds me of Julian Pinot's conversation on Barbell Shrug podcast, where they're talking about how when he does that yoke walk, like with 1,000 pounds or something insane, and he's just saying he says, I burn all the questions. I don't think about anything. I just think I'm going to pick up this weight. I'm going to go from here to over there. And that's just what's going to happen.
Yeah.
He doesn't allow anything else to go through his mind because then he gets caught up in it and he starts thinking about everything else. And that guy's crazy. He starts talking about how he felt like his femurs were bending. Yeah. But still, I mean, do you think that would even be possible if he thought for a second that this isn't possible? You know what I mean?
I don't know with that much weight.
It's insane. It's insane. I don't know. I think it's got a huge part in it, and I think we're capable of so much more than we think we are. Like you always hear the stories about like a grandma like picking up a car when a kid gets trapped underneath it or something like that. Like if she came in here and tried to deadlift 1,000 pounds, it's not going to happen. But then you get all that adrenaline in her mind. There was no other option but to pick up a fucking car. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think it's a huge untapped. When you put it that way too, you can kind of relate to an athlete and tell them, like, at least in my mind, that old lady picked up a car. Like, what the hell? I can do anything, right?
Yeah.
At least try.
Yeah, at least try. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, especially like so like on a field, if you doubt for like a second, like that's a millisecond loss, or that's like a fumble that you could have picked up.
For sure.
So like teaching someone like don't let that even enter your head, just go with it. I don't know, but then I guess that's kind of also a good question. Mm-hmm. Are you trying to attain like athletes to get into what you call like flow?
I think flow, for every athlete, they have like their own range where they feel like their best.
Mm-hmm.
And so flow is a topic that is used a lot. It's a term that's phone. You know, it's like you're not thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what we want people to do when they're competing. But when they're training, we want them to think about it because that's how you're trying to get better. That's how
You want to be
increase.
mindful in that moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
But when you're training, or when you're competing, that's when you're not second guessing yourself because there's nothing you can do to get better at that moment. And it's teaching them like you have to go with what you got in the moment and then you learn from it afterwards.
Right.
So you take your beatings after the game, not during the game.
Fair enough.
Training is different than testing.
Definitely. And that kind of brings up another thing is how something I saw a lot in high school is people that handle losses really poorly. So I can think of one kid specifically who's really, really good. But then when he'd lose a match, it was like devastating to him. Like he would cry, he'd be a mess. Like I swear you wouldn't learn a damn thing from the match other than he was just really upset. And I think there's like a really happy medium there because my brother comes to mind. He was a wrestler as well, and he didn't give a shit. And I remember one time I walked into a gym, and Cole's on his back, and he looks over and sees me walk in, and he's just waving at me. And I was like, he couldn't care less. Like he was about to lose the match and couldn't care less. And at the same time, there's that other kid on our team who would tear down the building if he lost. And how do you find that happy medium? Like how do you help somebody that's really, I mean, it's almost a good thing because he's so damn good he doesn't know how to lose. How do you teach somebody how to lose? How do you teach somebody to handle a loss and learn from it and move on?
Well, you talk about like in goals, like the difference between outcome goals and process goals.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, what athlete do you know that's never lost?
Right.
I mean, like if you got to learn how to keep on going. And when you're focused on the process, you're focused on like, what am I doing right? Because the outcome is out of our control. You can't control what the other person's going to do. You can't control if they're going to change their defense. You can't control, who got hurt on what team or whatever. But you can control, did I do my technique right today? Did I improve since the last time? And I think, going back to your question about what high school athletes can do, especially athletes that, they are really good and they're going to advance to college, like that's going to be a huge difference.
Yeah.
Because if they got to college, that means they're really good, but so is everybody else.
Right.
And recognizing that, how do you stay focused on the process even though you're not getting all that reinforcement for being good all the time?
Right.
Like, how do you keep your motivation and your hard work? That's one of the biggest difference I see between athletes who succeed and don't succeed.
Right.
I think that's something I ran into in college too. Like, because in high school I was one of the better players on the team, but then you got to college and we're all that good. So, I mean, I had to put a lot more time in the gym and stuff, and it was really hard at first getting there and just like developing that work habit that I didn't really have in high school because I just had the talent to do it,
Yeah, Matt talks about that a lot too. He's also a D1 athlete, and he talks about how he was king shit in Iowa, and then went to Kentucky and started running into some people that are just as talented, but might have worked a little bit harder, and run into a wall. So I'm sure that's the biggest mental hurdle for probably anybody that's made it to that point, because they've had nothing but success, or very close to nothing but success for a long time. That'd be hard to get over. Wish I had that problem, right?
Yeah. That definitely is something like you'd want to start as early as possible.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like it would be kind of like a mindset of a high schooler to be like, well, I'm good enough. I just want to get college, and then when I start running into that, I'll start practicing this. But at that point, like,
Everybody's
you're
getting
too far
better.
behind.
You're behind, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about that with our high school athletes that even work out here, because a lot of them, not in the psychology realm, but a lot of them are super, super talented. They go to the next level, and there's people that are just as talented but stronger and more freak athletes, and they run into a wall. And yeah, I'm sure that's a hard wall to break down.
One of my favorite books or podcasts is Grit by Angela Duckworth. You guys know that?
No,
Nope.
Yeah, it's a great one for any athletes.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, it's about kind of persevering and passion and hard work and how that trumps talent in terms of people who actually make it really far. So she's a psychologist of human achievement. And it's critical. It's like, do you know how to keep going despite having adversity?
That's
I like that title.
me too. Me too.
We all
I'm
use
going to
that
read that
word.
immediately.
Yeah. You know what? That's a really good segue. Let's take a break. But when we come back, let's talk about the difference between grit and motivation, and maybe how that applies to the general population, how we can keep, maybe change our lifestyle, make a healthier change like everybody's trying to do here in January. Cool?
Yep.
Cool.
That's good.
Yes.
I've had a lot of problems with injuries, with back problems, knee problems, those things, and as a result, it's been difficult to keep exercising, and I struggle with my weight, keeping my weight up, so I wanted something that would, make me commit to doing it, have some accountability where I would have people that would call me out if I wasn't into class, those types of things, and people are really great about saying, just where were you, make sure you get here, those things, which I think is important for me because I need that encouragement to get there and make sure I'm there, because otherwise it's easy to sleep in the mornings, and I need to make sure I don't do that. A lot of the corrective exercises helped, and really just some of the modifications in the workouts, stuff that I wouldn't have necessarily done myself when I was at the gym trying to work out and do weights and those things. And as a result, I'd injure myself worse because of what I was doing and maybe push through pain when I shouldn't be. And so I think done a really good job of helping me work through that and say, well, I think I should be able to lift this amount of weight doing this exercise, but it hurts, so let's back off a little bit and do a lower exercise, and I'm still getting the benefits from that. The small class size, get to know your classmates. The people that are in class with you typically are relatively the same each day, at least in my case it is. And that's good. You kind of get to know each other, and that makes it a little more fun when you're working out because you know the people, those types of things. I'm not as young as I used to be, and so as a result, I have, again, some more injuries and those things. And having somebody that can work with you and help you get through those injuries and still exercise at the same time so that you're building the strength and hopefully correcting some of the issues that led to those problems in the first place.
That's like a whole new thing too, is college kids like straight addicted to video games.
Oh, yeah. It's
so
just a
accessible.
generation now,
So
really.
accessible.
Like,
My dad never allowed it. He let me get a Nintendo 64. I remember that, and I was king shit at all those games. But anything else?
I remember those days.
Yeah. I remember Xbox came out, and all my buddies would get it, and then anytime I play with them, they just whoop me because I had no idea what I was doing. I have one friend that's in the military, and he said that he's in the Marines. He's using like these drones that would go and hit IEDs, and he said it was controlled by an Xbox controller. Isn't that crazy?
That's awesome.
He said they make it like that because so many kids his age are the ones doing it, and they're so
Yeah.
comfortable with their controller.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, I want to say I watched like a documentary on that on YouTube or something.
Really?
Yeah,
Pretty interesting, huh?
Who came up with that idea? Let's make a.
It's brilliant.
it is
Wow.
really.
Yeah, it's probably the guy that had to keep teaching these guys how to do
Probably.
it. And then he's like, you know what, fuck it. After we go home from there, they're all using that controller.
Let's just go to that.
Let's teach them how to do that thing.
Huh.
Anyway. Okay, you guys ready?
Yep.
Sweet.
Let's do it.
All right, welcome back. We're going to be talking about, I think we're going to transition more to grit versus motivation since you brought up that awesome book. Give me the author one more time.
Angela Duckworth.
Angela Duckworth. I'm definitely going to have to check that out. Did she have an Audible? Is that on Audible?
She's got a good podcast.
Ooh, even better.
I think it's like 6 minutes long. So
Even better. Cool. Well, I'm definitely going to have to check that out. But I think it's a good segue because I have that conversation a lot with the general population athletes in here. A lot of them will ask me, how do I get motivation? How do I keep motivation? And I always like to tell them, motivation is such an awesome thing. It's super powerful because it can really drive you to do damn near anything. But you can't rely on it. I'm not motivated 90% of the time to do the things I want to do, right? But it's like, it's just something you have to do. I like to use the example with my kids, like when they're crying at night and they need a diaper change or need a bottle. Like I don't have to listen to like Eye of the Tiger to get up and change the diaper, right? I just have to do it because that's like nobody else is gonna do it. That's something I have to do. And I think that's the difference. That's like grit. You just have to. It's something you have to do. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
How do you communicate that with your people?
you know, part of grit is you keep doing it despite it being challenging, but it's also like finding something that you are passionate about. So it's easier. I mean, think about some of the stuff that we read in our spare time that other people would find horrible. But
Right.
because we're just into it, we're like, yeah, I'll stay up late and finish this book.
Right.
You know, when you're passionate about it, you can keep on doing it. So that's one of the things is you will never excel as an athlete if you hate the sport.
You gotta find something you're passionate about.
Yeah, gotta find something you're passionate about. And then two, it's like learning how to fail. So learning how to get better with each time and just never kind of let down. And, you know, I don't think I'm gonna quote it right, but it's in the book. They talked about, you know, like with middle schoolers and high schoolers about making them stay in something that they have to try to progress in. You know, because there's that idea of like, let's let them try a lot of things, which makes sense because
Right.
they don't know what they're passionate about. Like you don't know until you bump into it
Right.
sometimes. But also be like, there has to be something that you do that's hard. Like something that has to, you know, that you're always trying to get better at because then you're learning that skill of, okay, I gotta
Of
go keep
beating
working
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
trying to beat it. And then you can apply that to something else down the road.
That almost applies in my mind to everything. Everything. Like
For me, it was schoolwork.
schoolwork for sure. It's not something you could ignore. You had to do it.
I remember getting into college and just being like, oh my gosh, high school was so easy.
Yeah.
I don't have like enough, like learning how to study. That was the biggest thing in high school for me.
Oh, dude.
Like
Me
learning
too.
how to study.
I didn't learn how to study till my junior year of college, till I met my wife. She forced it. She dragged my ass to the library and be like, you're reading this book. And that changed things for me because up until then I was able to bullshit it and just get by. But I also think up until then I was regurgitating information. I never really owned
Really
any of
learned
the
it.
information. Yeah. And she forced it. That was a good thing.
Yeah, because a lot of athletes, they'll hit their max. You know, it's what the ones you were saying, if you never have to work hard, you just got by, you never actually learn that skill.
Yeah.
And then you get to the next level and you're like, what? Like you don't even know what that feels like.
Oh, yeah.
But the athletes who had to work that entire time, they're like, oh, this isn't new.
Right.
This is how I know how to operate.
Right. Have you ever heard the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink?
No. Is he
Jocko.
the Navy SEALs guy?
Yeah. Jocko's a Navy SEAL guy. He's a freak. He's awesome. But he has a podcast as well called the Jocko Podcast. And he talks a lot, both in the book and then in his podcast, about just making those decisions that suck. So, like, on his social media, he'll get up every morning at like 4 o'clock or something dirty and just take a picture of his watch and put it on social media, and it kind of punches everybody else in the face, right? And it's just because he's not happy to be up at 4 o'clock, but he takes it and his like tagline is get after it. And he always says like it's just making those decisions every day that you don't want to make that just drills this grit into your brain. And I love that concept. That makes so much sense to me. I don't know how. I recently listened to a podcast with him and he was talking about how do you instill that into somebody, and it doesn't. In his mind, he just kept saying it's just a decision. You just have to decide that you want to be great at something or decide that you want to be mentally tough. But do you have any other tricks? Like what can you teach somebody that's mentally weak or just has a really hard time making the decisions that suck?
Make them easy.
Make them easy?
Yeah. So, like, I mean, I know, for example, working out, I'm sure you guys know this one, like, put your workout clothes out. Like, just
Yeah.
eliminate all the little things that could get in your way. You know, when you're trying to eat healthy, you know, do some meal planning. You know, I mean, I know for me, like, if I don't plan, if I get busy with the kids, I mean, I'm not going to make a good decision
Right,
about
yeah.
what I'm going to eat.
yeah,
I'm gonna,
absolutely.
what's
Because you
easy.
wait until you're starving, and
Exactly.
then there's a place right next door that's got the food really quick and
Exactly.
cheap. That
But
makes
if you
sense.
plan, you know, so make it easy, make it convenient. You know, get the distractions out of the way. So I tell people a lot, you know, put your phone across the room. You know, if my phone's right there, I'm going to look at it. You know, but if you
100%.
put your phone across the room, you can't look at it, and you can actually get some work done.
For sure. Although yesterday I was squatting, and my watch called 911. Apparently on the Apple Watch, if you hold the button down too long, it just calls 911 and sends an SOS to everybody you
They
love.
come?
So that's awesome. No, I went running and got my phone and turned it off before I think everybody was alerted. But you're right. So yeah, maybe keep it within striking distance
Sure.
if you have an Apple Watch on.
You can turn it over.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good thought, though. I like that suggestion because for me, if I am intent on working out that day, if I know the next day, like let's say the babies recently, I got twins, and recently they've been very colicky and it's been tough. So I won't sleep all night. But sometimes the night before, I'm like, you know what, tomorrow I have to work out. I can't let that slip by. If I put all my clothes in the duffel bag, if I put my food in the duffel bag, I put my shaker with my protein mix in it, it is 90% more likely to happen, you know? So that makes sense. I like that. Make things easier. And then Jocko, like I said, he just says, do it. Just find it in you to do it for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize that, you know, it might still suck, but it might be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense. Anything else you guys got? Grit? No?
I think the thing when you're just talking about do it, I can't remember like one time where I've like told myself, well, again, this is just my stage in life. But like when those things like hard decisions, when I tell myself to do it, like when I'm caught up in it, it's just like, all right, this isn't bad. Let's just keep going with it.
Yeah.
But then again, I don't know what it's going to be like when I have twins
It's different.
Yeah.
or if I have twins.
Life is different.
Yeah.
Life is different when you have no sleep.
Yes.
As Carmen can attest to as well.
Can you imagine what Nancy's going to be like?
I'm sorry, Nancy. You're gonna be an animal. She gets his wife. She gets lots of sleep. I called. This was a while ago now, but I called and she was in bed at like 7:30.
Yeah.
I was like, my 2-year-old isn't in bed at 7:30.
She's got the kind of personality, though. I think she'll be all right.
She's easy going.
She's very bubbly.
very bubbly, but loves her sleep. You guys are getting a puppy, so that'll be a good intro.
Whoa. Let's not just start clearing this. 'cause
They're getting a puppy.
Oh, I heard.
They're getting a puppy.
No, you already know my reasons why I don't want to talk about this.
They're getting a puppy.
'Cause I don't want it not to go through
Yeah, that's true.
and then to
But
be disappointed.
well, regardless, if this one falls through, you should still get a puppy.
True.
I had a dog in San Jose, and that my parents encouraged it, and that taught me a lot about responsibility. Trying to
You're
like
responsible for another life. other than your
exactly,
own.
even if it was just a dog, like the fact that I couldn't just pack up and bail for a weekend or something, like that was big for me. And well, it wasn't really a puppy though, because I rescued him. But they are like babies; they don't sleep. You're gonna be up all night for a little while.
Yeah.
Anyway, so back to like Gen Pop tips. Another big thing I see in the gym that I think is a psychology matter is people that work out for different reasons. So, like in our fitness evals, we try to bring it out of the person of why they're actually there. And obviously, the first answer is always, "I want to lose X amount of weight," right? But that's never the actual reason. They never actually just want to lose weight just to see a smaller number on the scale.
Right.
A lot of times it'll be you'll finally drag it out of them that it's like a vacation coming up, that they just want to relax and not have to worry about sucking in their stomach the whole time they're on the beach or something like that. And that, I think, finding that real reason why you're actually there is a huge motivator. But also the people that come in because it could be so negative. It could be like, I just hate my body. Like I'm here because this is the thing I do to fix my body and to start like chipping away at it. Whereas the other people that 100% more successful, that come in because they love their body, regardless of what it looks like, but they just want to see what they're capable of. Mm-hmm. And that is beautiful to me. When I get somebody in a fitness eval that's like, oh, it'd be nice if I lost some weight, but I want to see if I can like deadlift. I want to see what happens if I can play with my kid. Or I had one guy who's like, I just want to dunk on my kid. And I was like, that is awesome. That's so cool. that seems to me so much more successful. How do you try to instill like positive self-talk, positive motivating goals, and try to get people away from just body shaming or like thinking such terrible things about themselves to keep themselves motivated? Because some people actually do use that negative self-talk as motivation, but I don't think that's going to last.
It's pretty critical.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, you alluded to it already, just like, what do you like when your body can do?
Yeah.
Like it feels good when you can do things.
Right.
And the rest tends to follow, but also, that's also out of our control. We can look at like, well, this is what I want my body to look like, but so many things play into that.
For sure.
Genetics and, just everything. And so that's a losing battle.
Yeah, definitely.
Because as soon as you get there, then you're like, oh, well, maybe it can look like this.
Yeah.
Versus just being happy about what your body can do and how it feels when
For
you
sure.
feel good.
For sure. I had a conversation with one guy once who, and this wasn't here, it was back in LA, and he told me, I asked him what his goals were, and he said, I want to look like David Beckham. I was like, okay. I was like, well, you don't have David Beckham's parents, so that's not going to happen. Like, I don't understand that, but I get where they're coming from. David Beckham's a sexy dude. But there's another girl on, she's like Instagram famous, Jackie. She's posters out there. Jackie Perez. She's got some really cool things to say about like how she talks a lot about how her body's like a rectangle. Like she really doesn't have curves and hips, and how that's like, it's just a fruitless thing to chase after for the rest of her life. Whereas like find your strengths, and like she's like, if I get really lean, I get abs. Like that's something that I like seeing. That's cool. And to stop like just constantly chasing those curves that might not ever show up because it's like you said, it's a genetic thing. And then she talks a lot, obviously, about just performance. She's really big into CrossFit, and she talks a lot about how, what she can do, what her body's capable of. I think that's cool. Trying to set positive goals like that.
And I think small goals is a big part of it too. Like people come in and they're like, I want to lose 60 pounds. Well, let's start with something realistic. Let's lose 15 pounds and then go from there.
Yeah, definitely. That's true. I think, at least in my experience, setting and meeting a goal is so critical to setting and meeting the next goal. Mm-hmm. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
I think in my experience with me personally, when I miss a goal, it's devastating. But if I do that consistently, I'm set in motion into a negative pattern. And I feel like sometimes I get a little bit just off on the wrong tangent where I feel like I'll never reach it again. Mm-hmm. So if I bring it way back in and say, you know what, I'm only going to hit this and focus really intently on this for a month. And if that happens, you start winning, right?
Yeah, and you figure out what worked. Half the time we're like, I don't even know what worked. But if you reach your goal and you're like, this worked versus this didn't work, and then you can come up with a new strategy.
Definitely. That makes sense too. I find that I use that a lot in the clinical side of things. Like instead of throwing the kitchen sink at you and doing cupping ART and stretching and chiropractic manipulation and laser, why not start with like this? Like this is the lowest hanging fruit. I like to say that. Mm-hmm. Hit that first and see what happens, and then we know it works, so we don't have to do everything every time. Mm-hmm. Cool. All right. Anything else? You got anything else before we talk about the workshops? Oh, that's a blank.
That thing turned off.
Did it?
Yeah.
Charge the battery back.
I guess we're going all in the audio again. This happened the first time. Damn it. All right. Well, we got to do what we got to do. Thanks for looking out for us, though. Anyway, so for people that want more actionable steps, we got workshops coming up. So we're going to have you, Carmen, come into our facility. We're going to talk to people about psychology, people that need some help. My initial thought was to have cater initially to the alpha athlete group and the guys that are really considering going to college to play ball or play sports, and talk about kind of the struggles they're having and how to keep motivation, how to keep their heads on straight, how to stay the course. Mm-hmm. You want to talk a little bit about what those workshops might consist of?
Yeah, sure. So the first one we're going to do is setting goals. So it is just how to add some structure to your goals that it makes them more helpful. And then we're going to talk about energy management. So some people call that anxiety management too. Just how do you kind of find your individual zone where you're the most optimal performer. Distraction management, we can all learn from that. How do we stay focused on what we need to focus on instead of getting either too future-oriented or too past-oriented. Confidence, which I also just call positive self-coaching. How do you want to coach yourself to reach your goals? And then we're also going to do workshop for parents on how to coach your youth athlete and how to just best support them as they're going through all this.
Awesome. I think that'll be huge for a lot of the athletes.
That'll be great.
That's
Yeah,
something.
Like the parents one.
That's what I'm thinking too.
do that earlier if we want to.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a really good idea because I know a lot, especially the people here, they tend to be early adopters and people that are really interested in performance gains, and the parents are usually really integral to that. They'd be great. And then in the future, I'd like to set some stuff up for the general population people. So some people that might be struggling with some of those problems we talked about with body shaming and negative self-talk, and how to maintain some of that grit, how to maybe use motivation to transition into grit and maintaining a healthy lifestyle and setting some habits into place that become a lifestyle.
Sure.
Cool. All right. If you guys are interested in that, go to our website. We're going to have tons of information on the website. We'll have a landing page just for people that want to sign up for those workshops. How many people can take those? You say
Anywhere from 2 to 8.
2 to
we
8, so we'll
need to have-
cap them at 8 people.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, sounds good. And we're going to have, it'll be you teaching it and then one other person, correct?
Yeah, his name's Joey Raymaker, and he is also trained in both counseling psychology and performance optimization. So.
Awesome. So like I said, guys, this is something I would have killed to have when I was in high school. And I know from talking to the kids or from the guys around here that played collegiately, this is the missing piece. It'll be huge. So thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Excited for it.
Thank you.
Awesome.